Hi, I'm Cole Spivey. The New York Times, how Wayne LaPierre survived a revolt of the N.R.A. Previously undisclosed documents reveal a sweeping effort by top officials and lawyers to oust the longtime head of the N.R.A. Not only has he remained, but he continues to influence the president. This article is written by Danny Hakim, August 22nd, 2019. Wayne LaPierre, the chief executive of the National Rifle Association, has confronted threats from all sides this year. He faced a revolt from the N.R.A.'s top lobbyists, its president, its longtime advertising firm, and several board members and donors that quickly became public. New documents reviewed by the New York Times show that the effort against him was even wider in scope, drawing in 3 outside law firms working for the N.R.A. and at least 1 in-house attorney. A wave of embarrassing leaks showed that Mr. LaPierre billed a contractor hundreds of thousands of dollars for bespoke suits and foreign travel, as well as some of his wife's makeup costs. Then this month, 2 mass shootings galvanized the gun control movement and prompted President Trump to float the possibility of expanding background checks, which is an anathema to the gun lobby. Anathema means hatred. But Mr. LaPierre, who has run the N.R.A. since 1991, has so far survived all of the eternal challenges and has continued to successfully advance his group uncompromising agenda. This week, he appeared to personally persuade Mr. Trump to resist significant measures sought by Democrats and gun control advocates. Now, Mr. LaPierre is continuing to purge opponents. On Thursday, the N.R.A. dismissed its longtime outside counsel, Charles J. Cooper, the chairman of the Washington law firm Cooper & Kirk. People with knowledge of the decision said, "Now, a second outside counsel and a 2 top in-house counsel resigned. The departures come after an internal inquiry showed that the lawyers were involved in an effort to undermine Mr. LaPierre. The N.R.A. is also considered halting payments to its former second in command, Christopher Cox, who left in June but is still on the payroll," said the people, who insisted on anonymity to discuss eternal matters. The N.R.A.'s apparent success in fending off stricter gun regulations represented an important show of strength for Mr. LaPierre after months of damaging turmoil. And it shows that even in a diminished state, the group wields the vast influence over the Republican Party, and particularly President Trump, after spending more than $30 million to help get him elected. Charles J. Cooper, a longtime outside counsel to the N.R.A. in 2013. The photo was a 2013 photo photographed by Stephen Crowley in the New York Times. And I'll show you what it looks like. N.R.A. officials have said that rebellion was sparked by Mr. LaPierre's decision to pursue an internal audit of contractors. The infighting became public in April when Oliver North departed as the group's president after seeking his own financial review and being accused by Mr. LaPierre of trying to extort him. Mr. Trump urged the group to stop the eternal fighting and get back to greatness fast. Previous reporting by the Times and others has chronicled the eternal turmoil around Mr. North's departure. But the new documents show a deeper level of coordination than was previously known in the efforts against Mr. LaPierre, with extensive discussion between Mr. North's allies and the N.R.A.'s own outside counsel. Mr. Cooper and other lawyers exchanged emails urging leaks and countermeasures that would undermine Mr. LaPierre's strategy. At one point in April, Mr. Cooper wrote another lawyer in frustration saying, "No one on our side will leak." The documents also show how Mr. LaPierre scrambled to shore up his standing, reaching out to board members for support. And handwritten notes taken by an aide to Mr. LaPierre's, scrawled on a yellow legal pad, detailed with the N.R.A. saying were the threats made by Mr. North to force Mr. LaPierre to resign. There would be revelations about sexual offenses by one of Mr. LaPierre's colleagues, and about spending on Wayne clothing and luxury travel. Mr. North sought the immediate resignation of Wayne, the notes said, adding, "Windows is short." Mr. Cooper, in a statement on Thursday, said, "Throughout the over 3 decades in which I have represented the N.R.A., I have adhered to the highest standard and professionalism." He added that he owed an ethical duty of loyalty to the N.R.A. itself, and not to any individual officers or directors. Michael Volkov, an outside counsel who resigned Thursday, declined to comment, and did Brendan Sullivan, a lawyer for Mr. North. In legal filings, Mr. North lawyers have said that suggestions he took part in a coup attempt against Mr. LaPierre are fictitious, and that he had legitimate concerns about potential financial misconduct and was thwarted by Mr. LaPierre's total dictatorial control. Mr. LaPierre said in a statement that he was disturbed that the N.R.A.'s supposed friends engaged in what he called a scheme to harm our association, and said Mr. North abused the trust of the gun group. A spokeswoman for Mr. Koch referred to earlier statement when he said allegations that he was complicit in a coup attempt against Mr. LaPierre were offensive and patently false. Mr. LaPierre, 69, evolved from a wonky and introverted lobbyist to become the unyielding face of gun rights movement in America. Married without children, he has made the N.R.A. his life's work, framing it as a civil rights issue, and has been reluctant to step aside. But the leaks have taken a toll. Even Fox News, a reliable sanctuary, attacked him this week, with a host of describing him as an odious little grifter. In the aftermath of shooting in El Paso and Dayton, Ohio this month, Mr. LaPierre reverted to a familiar N.R.A. playbook. The group focused on issues like mental health rather than guns themselves, and Mr. LaPierre lobbied Mr. Trump behind the scenes, including in a 30-minute phone call Tuesday, after which Mr. Trump also referred to the shootings as mental problem and accused Democrats of waiting to give up the Second Amendment. Still, Mr. LaPierre influence will continue to be tested. The Republican-controlled Senate remains a reliable ally in fighting off new restrictions, but the gun control movement has begun to catch up with a well-funded backers like Michael R. Bloomberg, and in the 2018 midterm election cycle, gun control groups outspent the N.R.A. The rebellion inside the organization was ultimately about money and power, and it's featured a high-stakes tussle between Mr. LaPierre and Mr. North, an icon of the right who was involved in one of the most notorious political scandals of the 1980s for control of one of the country's most influential and incendiary lobbyist groups. At the center of the revolt was the group's advertising firm, Ackerman's McQueen, which had advised the organization for decades. Both Mr. LaPierre and Mr. North had financial ties to Ackerman. Mr. LaPierre was billing the firm for hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses, while Mr. North had a contract worth millions of dollars to appear on an online documentary series. New documents show how a dispute over the N.R.A.'s access to Ackerman's financial records escalated tensions between Mr. LaPierre's and Mr. North. Though the gun group's presidency is ceremonial, Mr. North began requesting documents relating to an internal inquiry into Ackerman. In February, Mr. LaPierre essentially told Mr. North to stay in his lane. In a previous undisclosed letter, he wrote, "Because you are an employee of Ackerman McQueen, I have a conflict of interest. I request again that you kindly cease and desist from any further involvement." Dividing lines took shape as Ackerman and Mr. North aligned with Mr. Cooper and other outside counsels. By early April, Mr. LaPierre was moving to consolidate support. Another prominent outside N.R.A. lawyer, J. Stephen Hart, warned Mr. Cooper and others in an email that Wayne is making calls to board members at rapid pace, adding that Mr. North should do the same. On April 12th, the N.R.A. sued Ackerman, saying it had concealed details about its spending. Many insiders were caught off guard. After Ackerman attorney sent the lawsuit to Mr. Cooper, he responded, OMG. Allies of Ackerman hatched countermoves, including a plan to create a committee to investigate the group's finances and expose Mr. LaPierre's billing practices. The documents reviewed by the Times also show the extent to which a second rivalry was brewing between Mr. Cooper and William A. Brewer III, a Democrat who Mr. LaPierre had hired a year earlier. Is it LaPierre? Mr. LaPierre? I'm just going to say Mr. LaPierre. By Brewer ascended quickly and began getting all the significant legal work, including several congressional and state inquiries. Mr. North has said that Mr. Brewery's bills were draining N.R.A. cash at mind-boggling speed. But Mr. Cooper is also expensive, charging $1,350 an hour, compared with $1,400 an hour for Mr. Brewer, people with knowledge of the billing said. Before proposing this special committee, Mr. North called a close aide to Mr. LaPierre, urging her to tell her boss that he needed to resign. If he did not, Mr. North warned that damaging information would be released about Mr. LaPierre spending. If he did, Mr. North would help arrange an excellent retirement package, according to the aide's handwritten notes. A second N.R.A. official also overheard the call. And here's a picture of Oliver North departed as the group's president after a bitter eternal battle with Mr. LaPierre. The photo is by Alex Wong, and it's on Getty Images. Mr. LaPierre refused to resign, viewing the call as extortion attempt. Later that day, the aide emailing Mr. North went with a blunt response. This note confirms that he will not endorse you for another term as N.R.A. president, she told him. With one board lining up behind Mr. LaPierre, the effort to remove him quickly stalled. In a text message later that evening, David Lehman, Mr. Cox, in-house counsel, wrote to Mr. Cooper, "You should call Ali this evening. Things have turned." "Turned how?" Mr. Cooper replied. "Badly," Mr. Lehman wrote. 2 days later, on April 26th, with the group's annual convention underway in Indianapolis, Mr. Cox texted Mr. Cooper, all but conceded failure in an effort to weaken Mr. LaPierre. "I fear we are not changing the tides," he wrote. The next day, the Times reported that Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, had opened an investigation into the N.R.A.'s tax-exempt status. "This is a debacle," Mr. Hart, who had just been dismissed by the N.R.A., wrote in an email to Mr. Cooper. "Is Brewer a moron or a Manchurian candidate?" Mr. Cooper replied by saying of Mr. Brewer, "He is kicking our side's ass because no one on our side will leak ACMEC's info." The unrevealing of lawyers, guns, and monies coincides with the departures of half a dozen board members in recent weeks. But Mr. LaPierre remains center stage, as polarized as ever. I'm thinking LaPierre or LaPierre. LaPierre probably would work. LaPierre would work. Donald Trump and Wayne LaPierre are made for each other, said Peter Ambler, executive director of Guilford's The Gun Control Group, started by former Representative Gabriel Clifford. He called them mirror images engulfed in allegations of corruption and mismanagement. But Todd Ratner, a member of the NRA's board, said, Wayne is leading and proving that he has the political juice to get the job done. Okay, so this is a pretty good article about the N.R.A., and I just wanted to say some things about what's happening with the N.R.A., and I don't think they should have anything tax exempted. I think they should be a private organization, and they need to kind of realize that guns are very dangerous, okay? Especially assault rifles, okay? And I feel that all assault rifles should be banned, okay? I'm just going to put that out there. I don't think bolt rifles should be banned. So when you... I did a mime once called JFK, and in that mime, I don't know if you noticed, there's a moment, okay, of the bolt, right? And that's kind of what that mime was saying. I think having a bolt rifle is fine because it's very easy to run, especially as a crowd, and grab someone that has a bolt rifle gun and take them down. Because remember, when we made this law, or you can call it a law, part of the constitutional right of the Second Amendment, okay? This was a time when we had muskets, okay, and we had to load the gunpowder, and then we push the little thing, and then and hopefully it would fire, right? A bolt rifle gun, okay, you're going to be able to stop that guy eventually. If the guy showed up with a bolt rifle gun, he's going to be able to be stopped. Now, we have to look what happened with Oswald and JFK. That was done with a bolt rifle gun, okay? They're still dangerous. But he killed one person, almost two, okay? Because he almost got the other representative that was in the car with JFK. Of course, he killed the president. But the other representative that was in the car just got hit in the wrist. And then, of course, the First Lady could have been killed, too, by the bolt rifle because of the way that he used it so quickly, right? And what I'm trying to say is that I think bolt rifles should be legal. And I think sidearms should be somewhat legal. I do not think police should have sidearms. I think police should only have pepper spray and their stun gun. That's it, okay? England has done fine without them carrying sidearms. SWAT should have all guns, okay? The SWAT teams, they can have it. They can have the HK7s, they can have the M60s, they can have, the good sniper rifles. SWAT is when you call them in to do the job, okay? There's just too many idiots that are carrying guns, okay? Especially assault rifles. And when I mean assault rifle, I mean a rifle that can shoot like semi-automatic fire, or a rifle that can shoot rapid fire just by pulling the trigger over and over. That should be outlawed, okay? That's an assault rifle that's made to kill many people in the crowd. This is addressing some of this issue in the New York Times, okay? Should there be the N.R.A.? I don't care. It's a private organization, fine. Should they be on my side to ban assault rifles? If they are sane, okay? Yes, they should. There's no need for a person to have an assault rifle. Really not even to have a sidearm. And there's no need for police to have a sidearm. But the police are going to have to get rid of their sidearms first. They're going to have to make a stand. They're going to have to protest. And they're going to have to be on my side. They're going to have to go to the office and say, I am not going to carry the sidearm anymore. I'll carry my badge, I'll carry my stun gun, and I'll carry my pepper spray. But I am not going to carry a sidearm anymore. There's no need for me to go out in the public with a lethal sidearm that's designed to kill people. Those sidearms are not designed to maim. And they're not designed to injure. A police sidearm is designed to take away your life, okay? So that's one thing that we need to approach. So the police are going to have to be involved in controlling these mass shootings, which will continue to happen. Also, I have another song called Half Mass, which is about that. I just want to throw that out there. But anyway, I wanted to make my political stance about that. No more assault rifles. No more police carrying sidearms. And I think that American citizens should be able to open carry. I do. I don't think the police should. But I think American citizens should be able to open carry sidearms or bolt rifle guns. But I don't think they should be able to carry assault rifles. Okay. So you can go into a protest and have a bolt rifle gun or you can go into a protest and have a sidearm, and they should be able to carry it with them all day long. The police should not. They should be sacrificial people that give up their own lives to help other people, just like the police in England. It's my personal opinion. But this is a really good article, and I wanted to show you the first part of the article right here. Just to let you know, I do think the SWAT should be able to carry whatever type of gun, even flamethrowers if they need to. Because once you call in SWAT, that's calling in military. And I think we should be a powerful military nation. But I think beat cops, they don't need it. They just don't need it. And this is something I'm going to campaign. They need their stun guns. Hey, there are nuts out there. We need stun guns. There are nuts. Stun guns are good. They need their pepper spray. Man, pepper spray needs to be used more. Pepper spray works. It blinds you. It works very well. But pulling these guns out and killing these people in the car for, telling them that they're a concealed handgun license. I've seen this on YouTube. And the guy told the police officer that he had a concealed handgun or something, and he had the license for a concealed handgun, and the cop just shot him, because cops are so much about, oh, I want to be able to go home and see my wife and children, so I'm going to take your life. That's not a police officer. That's a gang member. A police officer will give up his life first for the sake of safety, okay? So they're not going to ever draw their weapon. They don't need a lethal sidearm. Thank you.